Welcome back to The Dark Side. Drop a like and comment down below on which of these stories you found most intriguing.
This happened a few years ago when I was 30 years old. At the time, I was staying at my condo in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It's a place I still own, located on the second floor of a fairly nice building that I won't name for privacy reasons. I usually go down there during the colder months up north. I work remotely, so all I really need is my laptop and phone. That freedom has always made it easy for me to escape whenever I want. I've always been a beach person, and Fort Lauderdale felt like a second home. For the most part, it's a clean and relatively safe city. The area my building is in is no exception, at least it usually isn't. This happened in the middle of January. It was late, sometime after 10 p.m. I was sitting alone on my balcony with my laptop, my feet resting over the railing. Everything was quiet, no traffic, no voices. Then I heard someone yelling from the parking lot below. At first, it was just random shouting. Yo, hey. I didn't react. I assumed they were talking to someone else. There was no reason they'd be yelling at me. Then I heard, hey, you up there? My heart skipped. Now I knew they were talking to me, and my first thought was, why? I set my laptop down on the chair and leaned over the railing. Standing near a car in the parking lot was a man staring straight up at me. He pointed and said, yeah, you. And I asked him what he wanted. He told me to come down so he could show me something cool. I took a better look at him. He was wearing a tank top and a backwards hat. At first glance, I thought he was just some immature guy messing around. I didn't respond. I sat back down and tried to ignore him. That's when I heard him laugh. Then he said, I'm gonna come up there and skin you alive. I stood up again and looked down at him. He was smiling, but there was nothing playful about it. The smile felt empty. Wrong. That's when I realized he wasn't a kid at all. He looked much older than I first thought. I opened my mouth to shout something back, but I stopped myself. I don't know why. Something about him made me feel like engaging would only make things worse. So instead, I grabbed my laptop, went inside, and shut the sliding glass door behind me. I expected him to keep yelling from the parking lot, but he didn't. The silence that followed was uncomfortable, but I still felt safer inside. I tried to brush it off. I told myself he was just another drugged-out Florida lunatic passing through. That sense of relief didn't last long. The silence inside my condo was suddenly shattered by violent pounding on my front door. Along with it came screaming, angry threats and obscenities being shouted from just outside. It was the same man. The banging was so loud and aggressive that I honestly thought he was going to break the door down. All I could do was yell that I was calling the police. It didn't slow him down. Then the sound changed. The pounding turned into sharp scraping noises, over and over, like something striking the door. That's when it hit me. He had a knife. The whole thing probably lasted a minute or two, but it felt much longer. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely think. Finally, there was one last heavy slam against the door, followed by one final shout. Then everything went quiet. After a moment, I walked over and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. He was gone. I called the police right after. When they arrived and examined the door, my stomach dropped. There were several deep stab marks carved into the wood. What I heard wasn't my imagination. The man had been attacking my door with a knife. I don't know what would have happened if the door had given way. I don't think he knew me. I don't think I was targeted for any personal reason. I believe he was just deeply unstable and looking for someone, anyone, to hurt that night. Even now, whenever I stay at that condo, I think about that night. And every time I hear footsteps outside my door late at night, I still wonder if he ever came back. I was about 9 years old when this happened. At the time, I spent a lot of weekends at my grandmother's house. It was an older home in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place that usually felt safe. But that day, a storm had rolled in early. Rain tapped steadily against the roof, and distant thunder echoed every so often. My grandma had left to run a quick errand at the grocery store nearby. She told me she'd be back soon. I stayed in the living room, sitting on the floor and watching cartoons on TV. The volume was low. Everything felt normal. Then the phone rang. I knew I probably shouldn't answer it, but I was a kid, bored and curious. So I walked into the kitchen and picked up the phone. I said hello. A man's voice answered. He sounded calm, almost too calm. He asked if he could speak to the adult in the house. I told him my grandma wasn't home. There was a short pause, and then he asked something that immediately made me uncomfortable. So, you're all alone right now? I hesitated before answering. Something about the way he asked didn't feel right. I said yes anyway. He then said he needed to confirm the address he had on file. That's when I hung up. I stood there staring at the phone, my heart racing. Even at that age, I knew I'd made a mistake. I went back to the living room and tried to focus on the TV, but I couldn't stop thinking about the call. About 20 minutes later, loud knocking hit the front door. I muted the TV instantly. The knocking was fast and urgent. Then a man's voice called out from outside, asking for help. He said he was hurt. Slowly, I walked toward the hallway and peeked around the corner, looking through the small glass window at the top of the door. That was a mistake. I saw him standing there, and the moment I did, he saw me. "Hey," he said quickly. "Little guy, please open the door. I'm hurt really bad." I panicked. I ran back into the living room, closed the blinds by the window, and crouched behind the couch. There were no cell phones back then. I had no way to call my grandma. I was completely alone. The knocking got louder. His voice changed. It no longer sounded desperate. It sounded annoyed. The pounding became harder, more aggressive. Then it suddenly stopped. A second later, knocking started again, this time on the window right next to me. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said. "I just need help." I was crying silently, hiding behind the couch, afraid to move. After a moment, everything went quiet again. I didn't wait. I ran to my grandma's bedroom, locked the door, and climbed into her bed. I pulled the covers over myself, leaving just enough space to breathe. Outside, rain hit the window and thunder rolled through the distance. For a short moment, it felt calming. Then I heard movement. A shadow passed by the window. The man was there again. I heard the window rattle as he tried to open it. I froze. Thankfully, it was locked. I stayed completely still under the covers. I don't think he saw me. That was the last time I heard him. About 20 minutes later, I heard the front door open. My grandma was home. I ran to her crying and told her everything. She called the police immediately. I answered their questions as best I could before she sent me back to the guest room. They never found the man. My grandma never told my parents, and she told me not to either. After that, she never left me alone when I stayed over. Eventually, I stopped staying the night altogether. Looking back now, I realize how close I was. One unlocked door, one bad decision, and this story could have ended very differently. I took my Jeep on a road trip to Colorado to do some off-roading in the wilderness. I spent a few days running trails around the Red Feather Lakes area, and I decided to end the night on one called Dead Man's Road. It wasn't an easy trail, but the scenery made it worth it. I brought a sleeping bag with me and planned on sleeping in the back of my Jeep with the rear seats folded down. I pulled off just far enough from the trail so I wouldn't be immediately visible. The chances of another vehicle passing through that late were extremely low. Some people think it's strange that I enjoy off-roading and camping alone. I've always preferred being by myself. I call it camping, even though it's more like luxury camping. Instead of a tent, I was sleeping in the back of my Jeep, surrounded by nothing but trees. I ate a couple protein bars and some snacks as dinner, then set up my sleeping bag in the back. If you're wondering if I was doing this in total darkness, I wasn't. I had my LED light bar on, and it lit up a wide area around the Jeep. Eventually, I crawled into the sleeping bag. It wasn't comfortable, but that's the price you pay if you want to be on the trail early the next morning. I kept all the windows closed to keep bugs out, but I could still hear everything outside. That's when it happened. I heard a voice somewhere out in the woods, then a short burst of laughter. Given how deep into the trail I was, there was no reason anyone should have been out there, especially not in complete darkness. I looked through the windows, expecting to see headlights or taillights. There were none. A moment later, I heard the voice again, closer this time. I couldn't tell if it was a man, a woman, or even a kid. My hands started shaking. Whoever it was, they were definitely out there. I lay completely still listening. For a while there was nothing, just crickets. Then, from much closer than before, I heard a clear voice say, "Hello? I see you there." My stomach dropped. I wanted to move into the driver's seat and leave, but I was too scared to move. I convinced myself that if I stayed still, maybe whoever was out there wouldn't notice me. It doesn't make sense, but freezing felt like my only option. Then there was a loud bang on the rear windshield. I panicked. I shot up and practically dove over the front seats into the driver's seat. I started the engine and drove as fast as I safely could down the trail. The terrain was rough, and I was terrified that whoever had hit my Jeep was chasing after me. I didn't want to look in the rearview mirror, but when I finally did, all I saw was the red glow of my taillights. No one was there. I didn't stop driving until I reached pavement. Even then, I kept going, mile after mile, until I found a motel and pulled in for the night. Some people have asked me if it could have been someone stranded who needed help. I don't believe that. No one wanders that deep into the woods that late at night, laughing to themselves without a flashlight. And someone who needs help doesn't slam their hand against a vehicle like that. Whatever was out there wasn't looking for help. They were trying to scare me. And after that night, I stopped camping alone.